Welcome back to my channel Celebuzz. Please share and subscribe and press the bell icon for new updates. Oh wow, we have some amazing stories that Mr. Davis showed me. Picture this. Detroit 1998. The opera house is packed full. Red velvet seats filled with important people, singers and music makers. They all came to honor the Queen of Soul. But, backstage, you could feel the tension in the air like a sharp knife. Aretha Franklin sat in her dressing room. She was quiet, like a queen, and you could see she was really mad. Why? Because there was a name on the program she never said yes to. She slowly closed her makeup case, looked her helper right in the eyes and said, "If he sings tonight, I'm leaving." The people running the event had to quickly change everything. People were panicking in the hallways. Aretha didn't need a microphone to control a room. She just needed one look, one word, or one pause. For many years she stayed quiet about the big egos, the backstabbing and the betrayals. But in her last years, the Queen of Soul started saying names out loud. These weren't small fights. They were deep hurts. And first on her list was a woman who once tried to take her crown. Beyoncé. The comment that started a royal fight. It was supposed to be a tribute, a celebration of two famous singers sharing one stage at the 2008 Grammys. Beyoncé took the microphone to introduce the legendary Tina Turner. With a bright smile and strong presence, she said, "Tina, the Queen." The crowd clapped loudly. But somewhere across the country, another queen sat in silence. Aretha Franklin. To most people, it was a harmless compliment. But to Aretha, who had spent over 40 years earning the title Queen of Soul, it felt like a direct attack. The crown to her wasn't just a nickname. It was something she earned through gospel roots, civil rights performances, and amazing vocal skills. To hear it given to someone else even in another type of music wasn't just careless. It was disrespect. Within hours, Aretha put out a rare public statement. She didn't say Beyoncé's name directly, but the tone was clear. She called the remark a cheap shot and a lack of respect. This sent shockwaves through the music world. Some fans said it was just diva behavior. But those close to Aretha knew better. This was about more than ego. It was about erasing history. Aretha had fought to claim space in a world that often tried to silence black women. And now a younger artist who had grown up looking up to her was rewriting that story without even a nod. From that moment on, Aretha made it clear she wouldn't go to events Beyoncé headlined. She wouldn't share a stage. She wouldn't be photographed next to her. And in private, she didn't hold back. Friends say Aretha called her a gifted girl who forgot to bow. But that was just the beginning, because the next name on her list wasn't just competition. He was once a friend. Until one night, he embarrassed her on national TV. Ray Charles, the duet that never happened. Again in the mid-1970s, excitement buzzed through the studio. Aretha Franklin and Ray Charles, two giants of soul, were scheduled to perform a once-in-a-lifetime live duet on national television. The network was promoting it as a historic moment. Rehearsals had been smooth, respectful, even joyful. They laughed, swapped stories, and sang together with ease. Everyone expected magic. But when the cameras started rolling, something changed. Ray, always one to improvise, began changing from the agreed-upon arrangement. He made bridges longer, added flourishes, and twisted the rhythm in ways that hadn't been rehearsed. What was supposed to be a tight, elegant duet became a musical minefield. Aretha, a complete professional, tried to adjust in real time. But the performance quickly slipped off balance. To the casual viewer, it looked like spontaneity, but to Aretha, it felt planned. Off camera, Ray reportedly chuckled with producers saying, "She's great but not quick on her feet." That one line changed everything. Aretha was furious. She had built her career on poise, on control, on mastery. To be mocked so publicly, especially by someone she admired, wasn't just disrespectful, it was humiliating. She never performed with Ray again. Not on television, not on tour, not even in private sessions. And though she never addressed it directly, insiders say she told friends he tried to turn a duet into a solo, and me into his punchline. To Aretha, it wasn't just a moment of musical chaos, it was personal betrayal. A man she once called brother had turned her spotlight into a stunt, and the next musician on her list, he didn't pull stunts. He used words, sharp ones, Luther Vandross. The studio clash that turned ugly. In the early 1980s, Aretha Franklin was preparing for a major comeback. The Queen of Soul was ready to remind the world why she held the crown, and Clive Davis had just the right man in mind to lead the charge, Luther Vandross. Young, gifted, and already making waves as a producer. Vandross was known for his smooth arrangements and razor-sharp ear. At first, the match seemed electric. Aretha brought fire, Luther brought finesse. But almost immediately, sparks turned to smoke. Luther was a perfectionist. He wanted every note polished, every phrase sculpted. Aretha, on the other hand, was pure instinct. She sang from her gut, not a blueprint. The tension was subtle at first, mumbled comments, drawn-out takes. But it got worse quickly. The breaking point came during a late-night session. Luther allegedly turned to Aretha, frustration dripping from his voice, and said, "Stop over-singing. Silence." Aretha stood, looked him square in the eye and said, "Nobody tells the queen how to reign." She walked out just like that. The album Jump to It was eventually completed and became a hit, but the energy behind the scenes was radioactive. Every harmony masked an argument. Every take was a tug of war. They never worked together again, and Aretha never forgot. In private, she didn't mince words. He made good music, but he made it hell to make. To outsiders, the tension was just creative friction. But to Aretha, it was deeper. It was about respect, and the lack of it. Still, that tension was tame compared to what came next, because the next artist didn't challenge her in the studio. He tried to erase her legacy with a single quote. Keith Richards. The insult heard around the world. In 2007, Keith Richards, guitar legend, rock icon, and perpetual provocator, sat down for a Rolling Stone interview. It was supposed to celebrate decades of music history, but when the conversation turned to modern soul, his answer shocked even longtime fans. "Soul died with Otis Redding," he said casually. "Aretha's still around, but it's not the same." To some, it was just a cranky rock star clinging to the past. But to Aretha Franklin, it was an eraser, a dismissal of her life's work, her artistry, and her enduring relevance. And worse, it came from someone who had watched her revolutionize the genre from the front row. Aretha didn't stay quiet. In a rare radio interview shortly after, she responded with a trademark blend of grace and sting. "Some people confuse loud guitars with depth. Bless his heart." The line became legendary. But behind the scenes, Aretha was boiling. She felt undermined by a man whose entire career had existed alongside hers, often in her shadow. She had performed longer, topped more charts, and collected more Grammys than the Rolling Stones ever had. And yet here was Keith reducing her to a footnote beneath a man who had been gone for 4 decades. Insiders say she banned any mention of the Stones from future appearances. She declined all co-headlining offers. She refused any award ceremonies where Richards was also being honored. She never shared a bill with the Stones. She never spoke his name again. Because to Aretha, legacy wasn't a game. It was sacred, earned, fought for. But the next artist tried to turn it into one. Dionne Warwick. The funeral drama that reignited old flames. In 2017, Aretha Franklin was already battling the kind of illness that drained even her legendary strength. She was limiting public appearances, conserving her energy and choosing her battles carefully. But then a headline surfaced that made her blood boil. Dionne Warwick, another legend, another diva, another veteran of the golden age, had made a pointed comment at Whitney Houston's funeral 5 years earlier. She said Aretha had been expected to perform but didn't show up. What she didn't mention, Aretha had been physically unable to attend. Swollen feet, emotional exhaustion, and overwhelming grief had kept her home. To the world, Dionne's remark sounded like a footnote. To Aretha, it was a slap. She stayed quiet at the time, but years later, in 2017, she released a 5-page letter to the Associated Press, something she almost never did. The letter didn't hold back. She accused Dionne of blatant lies, of manufacturing drama, and of using a sacred event to stir gossip. It wasn't out of the blue. The feud between these two icons had simmered for decades. Quiet jabs, backstage tension, cold shoulders at tributes. But Aretha had reached her breaking point. She closed the letter with a single sentence that made headlines across the industry. Dionne knows what she did. No further comment. No clarification. Just a velvet-gloved dagger. After that, the feud was officially buried. Not with forgiveness, but with finality. Because when Aretha said she was done, she meant it, and the next name on her list, he didn't cross her at a funeral. He crossed her on her own turf. Detroit. Eminem. The local boy who showed no love. Aretha Franklin didn't just live in Detroit. She was Detroit. The churches, the record stores, The soul clubs. Her voice rose from its streets and became the heartbeat of a city. She gave back constantly, hosting benefit concerts, mentoring young artists, and repping her hometown in every corner of the world. So when Eminem burst onto the global stage in the early 2000s, becoming the face of Detroit for a new generation, Aretha expected at least a nod, a name drop, a sample, something. But it never came. In song after song, Eminem referenced hip-hop, legends, rock icons, even fellow Detroit natives. But never Aretha. Not once. To fans, it seemed like an innocent omission. But to Aretha, it was something else entirely. Erasure. She had broken barriers in an industry that wasn't built for her. She paved the way not just for women, but for every artist who came out of Detroit with something to prove, including him. Insiders recall a moment at a private dinner when someone brought up Eminem's rise. Aretha reportedly leaned back, shook her head, and said, "He knows who I am. He just chose not to care." And when asked in later interviews what she thought of his lyrics, she gave a one-word reply that said it all. Noise. There was no beef, no public drama. Just a quiet, permanent freeze. Because if Aretha gave you her blessing, it meant something, and if she withheld it, that meant something too. But the final betrayal, that one didn't come from a rocker or a rapper. It came from a man with a piano and a smile. Billy Joel. The duet that died before it lived. Aretha Franklin had long admired Billy Joel from afar. She respected his songwriting, his command of a crowd, and his genuine love for musical heritage. He was one of the few modern artists she believed had a deep reverence for the classics and for the legends who came before him. So when the idea of a joint concert emerged in the early 2000s, Aretha was intrigued. It was pitched as a celebration of piano-driven soul and pop, a meeting of two musical titans. She agreed to an initial rehearsal, cautiously optimistic that the chemistry would click. It didn't. From the start, something felt off. Billy was friendly but too casual. His jokes veered toward patronizing. During a brief break, he reportedly laughed and said, "Come on, Ray, loosen up. Take a shot of whiskey and lighten the mood." Aretha didn't drink. Never had. She had spent her entire career commanding respect without ever dulling her edges. The comment wasn't just tone-deaf. It was insulting. She stood up quietly, packed her things, and walked out of the rehearsal. No raised voice, no dramatic exit, just silence and a slammed piano lid. Later that week, a close friend heard her say, "He plays piano like a poet but talks like a fool." The concert was quietly canceled. No press release, no follow-up. And, from that day on, Billy Joel's name disappeared from her orbit. No invitations, no duets, no mutual appearances. Because to Aretha, respect was the music behind the music. And once that was gone, so was the relationship. Why Aretha stayed silent, until now. For decades, Aretha Franklin let the music speak. She was the first woman inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. The voice behind Respect, Natural Woman, and Chain of Fools. But behind every high note was a story, a conflict, a silence she chose to keep until now. Because at 76, with the end near and the crown still firmly in place, Aretha decided to tell the truth. Not for revenge, but for clarity. Because even queens bleed, even legends get burned. And sometimes the most powerful anthem is finally saying the names out loud. Which name shocked you the most? And do you think Aretha was right to hold these grudges? Or were they just the cost of greatness? Let us know below. Because the queen may be gone, but her voice still speaks volumes.